What's going on, passionate Pokemon players? I'm Ryan, and we're here for another episode of the Hawks Pokemon Nest. Today we have an odd type of deck that's going off of Oddish, right? We're going to get Oddish, Vileplume, Gloom, and Bellossom, all of the evolutions in here, along with Teal Mask Ogerpon as support. So what we'll do is go through each card in the deck, why I included it. Then we'll go through the strategy, strengths, and weaknesses of this deck, how to play it, what's good and what is not so good about it, right? Then we're going to kind of finish with some alternate cards to consider throwing into the deck. Be sure to stay tuned for our next episode later on in this week, where we're going to actually take it to Pokemon TCG Live. But without further ado, let's get into what we came to do. Alright, we always have to start with a kind of cool card up there, and usually I like it to be the card that the deck is built around, but like one of the Oddishes, but there's not an alt-art or anything of these ones, so we're going to go with our Teal Mask Ogerpon, which is a super great looking card from the Prismatic Evolutions. You can get your hands on him in real life, which I haven't gotten my hands on many of them. But anyway, let's start from the beginning with our Oddish. So the Oddish I went with in here, we're going to go with 4 of them, and I went with the Obsidian Flames one. The reason being is because we can get 4 the reason being is because we can draw a card if we get that one stuck in the active with Feel and Find. So that's why I went with that one. Now from here, there are specifics that we want to use. This Gloom, I want to go with the 151 Gloom. I'm going with 2 of them because of semi-blooming energy. When you play this card from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, look at the top 3. Any number of basic energies, pull out and attach to any of your Pokemon any way that you like. Right, so that's a pretty good card to get energy attached. The top 3 isn't crazy. You're not going to hit on it a lot, but you're going to hit on it occasionally, and that's really why I'm only going to go with 2 of them. Really, honestly, at this point, we might want to just bypass the Gloom and get straight into a Vileplume or a Bellossom, but it's good to have some other options to get these evolutions out. Right. Next up is Vileplume. Now this one is actually much better ability. It's basically the same thing as Gloom, but rather than the top 3, you're going to be able to look at your top 8. So now we're going to be hitting on that one a lot more. I find myself probably in terms of consistency getting about 2 energy per 8 because I do have 12 grass energy in there. So I think it's a good option in terms of going with in there to help you get loaded up sooner. Right. Then Bellossom. Now this Bellossom, I was really looking at it. Initially, I was just going to go with Vileplume and have some other attacker in there. But Bellossom was a nice attacker because it's got powerful dance. Now for only 1 energy, you flip a coin for each energy attached though, and it does 90 damage for each head, so that's not bad. And when you're seeing that Vileplume can rather easily load up, and then potentially even your Teal Mask Ogerpon that we'll talk about in a minute, that's pretty good. I mean, it's very RNG based, but I mean, thinking about, for example, 4 energies being attached, you're going to be able to be hitting for 360. Are you ever going to get 4 heads in a row? Well, I did in my last match, but it's not going to happen a lot. A lot of times you are actually going to get 4 tails, right? But, I mean, just the potential there, it being a 1 prizer, it being pretty easy to load up. This one, I want to kind of say it's my main attacker, but really I find myself a lot of times going 50-50 with the Teal Mask Ogerpon. You know, there's a few good things in here. Obviously, Teal Dance allows you to attach an energy to him and then draw a card. So it's kind of a mini draw engine, allows you to attach an extra energy per turn. So then you're able to kind of load this guy up and make your decision. Do you want to go with the sure hit? It's probably going to be lower. You are only a lot of times going to have 3 or 4 on him. If you're playing an opponent that does play a lot of energies on their Pokemon, you're going to probably want to go with him as your attacker over the Bellossom. But also remember, this one's a 2 prizer, and he's a little bit squishy. I'm only going to play 2 of him in there. I think that's plenty. And then, you know, you can kind of go from there on how you pull him out. You can use a Night Stretcher or a Super Rod to get him back that we'll talk about in a bit. Right. Okay, let's go through some of the trainers then. The first trainer, as always, I'm going with the Buddy-Buddy Poffin. We're going to get 4 of those Poffins in there. I think it's really important to get your Oddishes on bench as quickly as possible, because it's the more Oddish you have, the more options to be able to get yourself Vileplume, Gloom, and then of course you always want to have at least one Bellossom attacker. So in an ideal world, you're going to have all 4 of them on bench or inactive at the same time. So Buddy-Buddy Poffin is really the way to get that happening. Right, and then Bug Catching Set, 4 of those as well. Just a really great card. If you're playing any type of grass deck, I don't see why you're not going to be playing 4 of these. Looking at the top 7, reveal 2 combination of grass, Pokemon, or energy. Put them into your hand. So this is going to help you be able to get your evolutions quicker. Continue with your Teal Mask Ogerpon energy attaching, and then attach another. So really good there. Right. Energy Switch is another really key card I see here. I mean, you really see it common in any Teal Mask Ogerpon. Being able to switch energies around is awesome, especially if we want to switch them over to our Bellossoms. And sometimes, too, you may not get your Bellossom out by the time that you're doing some evolution, so it really helps you be able to get some flexibility in when we are attaching. Night Stretcher. We're going to get a Night Stretcher out here. Obviously, we can pull an energy or a Pokemon straight back to hand, which is going to be good. I think a Night Stretcher is really great when you're playing any type of evolution deck, because you may get knocked out and then you're just able to immediately pull it back up, evolve again, right? Prime Catcher. So that's the ace spec I went with in this deck, is the Prime Catcher. I don't really think any others really do great in this deck. I will talk about in a little bit some of the other ones I considered, but Prime Catcher seems to work well. I think it's the kind of no-brainer in terms of ace spec in this deck. Then we have Rare Candy. I'm going to go ahead and throw 4 Rare Candy in there. You want to be able to get Bellossom out and your Vileplume evolved to be able to get those energies attached. Super Rod. I'm not extremely fond of Super Rod compared to many others, but in this deck it's one where it's very important, considering our Oddishes are going to be knocked out a lot, and a lot of times you may just have a Vileplume sitting on your bench. Your opponent, they don't seem to boss that one in, because once the Vileplume's evolved, there's no real reason to knock it out unless we're going to get that final card in hand. So but I do think it's important with that to just have more options, you know, especially with using Vileplume and Gloom's moves. You want those energies actually in your deck, so if you kind of get a lot of them going into your discard, you're able to grab them right back. Right. Well, not grab them right back, but more so put them in deck so that there's the potential that you hit when you are using that ability. Right, Ultra Ball. I actually went with Ultra Ball, and I don't have any Nest Balls, so you're going to use Ultra Balls a lot of times to get your Teal Mask Ogerpons out, but I also wanted the flexibility of being able to pull out a Vileplume, Bellossom, Gloom, whatever of those ones you want. So I didn't feel like I had room for Nest Balls, so we're going to go with our Ultras. Boss's Orders. 3 Boss's Orders seem to be enough, especially with Prime Catcher. I did kind of think about, like, the one I thought about was Rare Candy. Do I want 3 Rare Candies and 4 Bosses? I think, especially considering we have the Prime Catcher, 3 should be enough. Then Iono. This deck can brick pretty hard, especially because of the kind of dual evolutions where we may decide to go Vileplume or we may decide to go Bellossom. Sometimes you're going to have a Vileplume in hand, but nothing else, so do you really want to use its ability? So Iono helps us get that, and especially because it's a 1-prize deck, it helps to slow your opponent down even further and help you go higher. So it helps you out of a brick cannon, obviously can kind of hamstring your opponent, handstring, I don't know, however you want to say it, put him in a bad hand. Okay, and then Grass Energy, we've got 12 of them in there. I think I honestly wish I could fit 14 because it just is going to help us hit more, but then you get into the potential of just getting stuck with a bunch of energies in hand. Alright, strategy, strengths, and weaknesses here. The first thing is flood your bench. You really just want to flood that bench with as many Oddishes as you can, and then from there fill it up the rest with your Ogerpons. Of course, you want as many Ogerpons as possible too, to give you more options to use its ability and continue to draw and cycle through your deck. Priority 2 is obviously attaching energies, whether it's through the full blooming energy or whether it is through your Teal dance. Just get as many energies attached as possible. Try to spread them out a little bit. Don't go all in. I know that you do want to get your Bellossom with a lot of energies attached, but don't throw 4 of them on a Bellossom on the bench and then just allow your opponent to boss it up, and now you have no way of attacking. So while it is tempting to kind of load up on one, do a little bit of distribution here, and maybe it's going to cost you a little bit less attack, unless you're like 100% sure that your opponent's not going to boss you or this and that. I do find myself sometimes putting a little bit more on my Teal masks. Sometimes they can take at least one hit, and then if you've got 5 or so on them, you're able to just go in one shot. But be real careful with the Bellossoms. A lot of times I may put 2 or 3 and then rely on maybe using an energy switch when I get it into active, right? And then from there, once you attach and flood, you're going to basically choose your fighter. Is it going to be Ogerpon or is it going to be my Bellossom, right? In an ideal world, you're going to have a choice. Sometimes you're not, so think about that. Strengths and weaknesses of the deck. I want to say it's a one prizer, but it's kind of not. So I'm going to call it a one prizer preference, right? Because you want to be attacking with Bellossom. In an ideal world, you're going to just be using Powerful Dance. And really in a pinch, you can use Sleep Powder too, if maybe you only have 1 energy and just hope that you can stall a little bit. But that's your ideal attacker. But like I said, you may want to go with Ogerpon. He does have a little bit more of the guaranteed hits. It's easier to load up because of Teal Dance, but then from there. Another strength that can hit big with luck, right? If you get lucky and roll really well, just with 4 energies, you could hit for 360. That's what's nice about 5. Yeah, 50% from 5 can get you, you've got a solid chance of hitting for at least 270. Not the best, you may only hit 180, but from there, relatively consistent this deck is that I've found, because there's so many ways to attach energies. It helps you thin the deck out and then get some consistency in there. So that's what I found. That's why we've got 4 of a lot of the cards in there, 3 of some of the evolution. So I've gotten this to where I can be relatively consistent in there. Now weaknesses, it's very squishy. Bellossom has 130 HP. Even for a stage 2, that's really bad, right? So I thought about, even if you add a Hero's Cape in there, it's just not going to do well for you, because you're still at 230. So is that really helping? And then if you're going to go with your Teal mask for a 2 prizer, that's extremely squishy, 210. It's going to be pretty easy to one-shot that one and take 2 prizes for. And then the strength is like the weakness. Can hit big with luck, right? Sometimes you're going to hit 4 heads in a row. Sometimes you're going to hit 4 tails in a row. I've done both in the same match. So if you want to roll the dice with RNG, this is the deck for you. And a lot of my decks I've built lately kind of had some of that then, if you watch me. And then the Breaking Heart, I mean, as consistent as this deck is, if you do get a bad hand, it can be really bad sometimes. Sometimes I'm getting plenty of Teal masks out there. I've got an Oddish and a Vileplume in hand, but I can't find a Gloom Rare Candy or an Energy to save my life. Our Iono is a great way to reset. Teal Mask is our draw engine, but it's really not the best draw engine. You're only drawing 1. So that's what kind of makes this a little bit tough in terms of a deck. If you do brick, it's going to be real hard to come back to. You're going to be a lot of times sacrificing Oddishes and hoping that you're going to Super Rod or Night Stretcher them back into your hand or your deck, right? And then some other cards to consider in this deck. First one I thought of was Pidgeot EX. I kind of almost went with this one over the Ogerpon, but I think it's better to stick with the Ogerpon. We want to kind of save our rare candies. That's for the Oddishes. I mean, we do already have them, so it wouldn't mean we put a lot more in there. And then it can allow us to really search for anything we need. So there's some good advantages. But then, the ability of the Ogerpon to just throw more energy on itself and our other Pokemon is something we need, because we really want a lot of energy. So I'm going to stick with the Ogerpon. But if you do, you would want to swap him for the Pidgeot, in my opinion. Then Max Belt's another one to think about. It does give you some guaranteed damage on our Bellossom or even on our Teal mask. So if I were to consider any other one, I'd probably go with that one, with the Max Belt, right? Now, Hero's Cape's another one to think about. And I almost thought about it, maybe not for the Bellossom, but more so for our Teal mask Ogerpon. And then maybe what you could do, and I didn't put it in here, is throw in some Bravery Charms and Arven rather than the Iono. You know, then you're able to maybe pull out the bug catching thing and see if you can go from there. So if you want to kind of go and try to make yourself a little bit more beefy, maybe go with the Bravery Charm Hero's Cape, which would be used on the Ogerpons. But I think, again, we really are attacking with Bellossom whenever possible. So that's why I like that. Gardenia's Vigor's one to think about. I just don't think this card is that great anymore. It's kind of fallen out of favor. It's about to rotate soon anyway as well. But it is one to think about if you want to really try to get some more energy attached per turn. You know, we can go from there. Then from here, if we really want to like change how this deck functions completely, and I did make a kind of alternate that I didn't test too much, but going full on with Exeggutor EX, the Alolan one, rather than our Teal mask, we could go that route, throw in Lady and Earthen Vessel, taking out and probably even taking out the Vileplumes completely. And then we're just going to go full on with the Exeggutor to attach as many energies as possible to our Bellossom. And you can do some decent damage with that. Then it's going to be a lot easier to throw 4 of them on there. You're going to be able to just prioritize all your Oddishes to evolve. So that one could be a deck coming soon. I didn't test it out too much because it was just so different from my original concept. And I thought of it right in the end. So could be an alternate to consider. Let me know in the comments if you get that one going. One last one to think about too would be an Artisan, and maybe that one is if you're going to do the Exeggutor route because you have Execute, or even a Pidgeot route. I just the reason I don't like Artisan too much in the current iteration of the deck is because we have Ogerpon, and our only other 70s are going to be the Oddish. So it's pretty easy to just use Poffins and get them out really quickly. So Artisan, I'm not going to throw in. It really can just help your opponent more than you. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Hawks Pokemon Nest. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please stay tuned for next time when we're going to actually take this to the test in TCG Live, right? But please, before you head out, hit that subscribe button so you can become part of the Hawks Nest. Fearless flock of fabulous folks who love to do what we love. I love to make these crazy decks. I love Pokemon. I love putting this stuff out for you, so I hope that you all like it. If you're not quite ready to fly it though, just hit that like button. It will show up in an algorithm near you in the near future. But until then, we'll see you next time.